Welcome back, fellow jazz bums. Today we have our very good friend of the channel with us, Zev Feldman. We're going to go over all of his wonderful Records for Day releases for this year. Thanks for watching. I'll kick it over to Felipe to give us a little intro. What's going on, Felipe?
Thank you, Chris. Welcome back, Zev. Always a pleasure having you in the channel, joining us, and thanks for putting this great historic. I wouldn't say I like the word archival, but I wouldn't say archival. I think this is so fresh and great, and just new uh, ways of seeing, listening to music from this great artists that we're going to be talking about today. So Record Store Day 2025 kicks on next Saturday at April 12, and all these records are limited, and they will be followed by CDs available the next Friday. So welcome back, Zev. Pleasure to have you here once again.
Hey Felipe, hey Chris, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be back with you. It's always nice to be on with you guys and talking about all the music. Thanks for having me
Absolutely.
today.
No, it's
Always.
a yeah, it's a great pleasure. We're going to go through a great roster of artists today. There's Bill Evans, of course. There is Charles Mingus. There's Freddie Hubbard, Kenny Dorham. But I would like to start with the two of these releases, and here's one of them: Kenny Dorham, Blue Bossa Live at the Blue Morocco.
Mhm.
And I find those interesting because together with the Freddie Hubbard release, they are both from 1967 performances at the Blue Morocco Club in the Bronx. The Blue Morocco, for the ones that are not familiar, was owned by Sylvia Robinson, who later founded Sugar Hill Records, and the rest is history. So, Zev, kicking off, how this Blue Morocco recordings came about, the tapes showed up, and what was the work behind that?
Well, it's interesting. I've actually known about these recordings. First of all, let's talk about this man, Bernard Drayton. Bernie Drayton, he's known amongst his friends, and he's someone I've had a great pleasure of knowing, boy, for about 18 years or so. I met him first around 2007, just unrelated to this job. He'd worked for many, many decades in the advertising world at
Hmm.
Young and Rubicon, where he put a lot of advertising campaigns, and later worked at Three Tree Productions, amongst other places, which was a very well known jingle house in New York, which would collaborate with creative directors of different ad agencies. And Mr. Drayton was really involved in the trenches for so long in that world, bringing music and advertising and all doing all sorts of other stuff. He's a producer, also a photographer, and he's also a recording engineer.
Oh, wow.
And he is actually the father of Charlie Drayton, the great rock drummer
Oh,
who is in Keith Richards' The Expensive Winos, and also has played with Bob Dylan and countless others, and is a really terrific guy. But I first, I met Bernie around 2007, and then working at Resonance in 2009, he kind of came back into my orbit again, because at Resonance Records, I was working with George Claben, and we've been on the hunt looking for tapes, and it was known that Bernie had this archives. By the way, Bernard Drayton, some interesting things about him. He was the recording engineer that recorded John Coltrane's Alatunji concert,
Oh,
amongst
wow.
other things. And when I was mentioning him as a recording engineer, it's also very important too. He's also really one of only a handful of African American recording engineers in jazz music that I can think of. First of all, I think of Ray Hall, who ran RCA Studios in New York. We have Orville O'Brien, you guys know, Forces of Nature, Friends and Neighbors from Ornette Coleman, Charles Tolver, Alice Coltrane, engineered a lot
Mhm.
of other great recordings. But Bernie, in 1967, because of a man named Del Shields at radio station WLIB. He invited Bernie to come down with his Revox tape recorder and record a series of concerts that were taking place at this club called the Blue Morocco. And the Blue Morocco was owned by Joe and Sylvia Robinson, as you were mentioning, that started Sugar Hill Records. Um, but Bernard was there with his gear, and he captured these moments. Um, really capturing some incredible music, artist in incredible form. First of all, well, I guess we can talk, these Kenny Dorham and these Freddie Hubbard releases to me are very special. Again, I knew about them going back to around 2009,
Wow.
2010. And
Oh,
it
wow.
feels like I've been talking to Mr. Drayton forever about these recordings and wanting a deal to be done. And it was really exciting last year when we could bring everything together. And we had an arrangement with him. And then we were able to put a deal together with Dwayne Hubbard, with the Freddie Hubbard estate, for what's become Freddie Hubbard on Fire, this album right here. And we were able to make contact and do a deal with Kenny Dorham's children to put out this release, Blue Bossa in the Bronx. Both recorded in 1967, and I think they're very important for numerous different reasons. You want to start with Kenny Dorham for a moment?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just say that I think this is an extremely rare bird. This is a man, I think, whose legacy has grown even more important. When I was getting into jazz as a teenager in the late 80s, early 90s, Freddie Hubbard, Kenny Dorham, Woody Shaw, Charles Tolver, amongst others, were the guys that I was really drawn to. And Kenny sadly physically left this planet in around 1972, I believe. So he didn't have the recorded output of some of the other greats, but he comes out of Charlie Parker and bebop music and an incredible history. But man, like I think like you guys, I was really turned on by albums when I was younger, such as Uno Mas and Trumpet Toccata. This
Mhm.
Yeah.
collaborative effort with like Joe Henderson on In and Out. He was playing as a sideman on some of my favorite records, and I love Kenny Dorham, the breath, that sound with his tone, his musical compositional, his musical ideas and the way he expresses himself in his solos. I love him. And anyways, when I found out about these recordings, I flipped. I was like, that's going to
Mhm.
be big news for the world if we're able to find a way of bringing that out. And like a lot of other stuff, it just takes time and diplomacy. And when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But we finally got a deal with Bernard and the families to put it out. The Freddie Hubbard, I'm sorry, the Kenny Dorham release again is with Sonny Red on alto sax, Cedar Walton on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Dennis Charles on drums. This was a working band,
Mhm.
and I'll never forget Michael Cascuna, the late great, my hero Michael Cascuna told me once that he actually booked this band for his high school prom, which was really interesting too. But this was a working band that played around New York.
Mhm.
So it's really
Yeah.
nice to have this. What do you
Yeah.
guys think of the record?
I thought it was a spectacular, Zev, because again, it's a super like seasoned guy, right? Playing later in his career, later quote unquote, right? Just a matter because of his life span.
Mhm.
With an incredible band. It was also probably one of the last recordings by Paul Chambers, who died not too long after that, right?
Yeah.
He died pretty early as well. And I found amazing that you took your time to put a map of the Bronx here, you know, and all these recollections by so many. Eddie Henderson and amazing work by them Morgensen here, right? And I
Oh,
think yeah,
yeah.
and again, it's a working band. It kind of shows through what they were doing here, and also the testimonials, right? He was the uncrowned king according to Art Blakey. He just had to step into so many like greats, and he kind of got like a little overlooked because of that. But this record show seemed like in full control to me. And Blue Bossa, which is like his signature track with Joe Henderson doing that as well. I mean, and I think it's kind of small venue, and it comes across in the record. You feel like in that small sweaty club with them. It's such intense music, beautiful
Mm.
stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool, man.
Yeah,
No, I agree. I'm. This one's very exciting just because it's Kenny Dorham, and he with his life being cut short, there's just not as much. He didn't have as much content as a lot of these other guys, so I'm very excited about it. And I was listening to the files this morning, and I was just kind of shocked at how good they sound, honestly. Like, I mean, we say these are archival live releases or whatever, but the recording is great. Like, you hear all the instruments, and they sound good. So yeah, I'm very excited about this release.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I got to tip my hat to Bernard Drayton and Charlie Drayton that worked on the audio for
Yeah.
this project too. And we always had our dear friend Matthew Luthans who cut the lacquers for us on all these releases, in fact, on even the ones on Elemental. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited. Never thought I would have a chance to bring it.
Yeah.
It's such a rare one. It's
Mhm.
cool too. We were talking, you mentioned Dan Morgenstern a moment ago. What I thought
Mhm.
was kind of revelatory, he was talking about how much of a really smart, intellectual kind of guy he was. And he was telling me that, well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Kenny Dorham was working on an autobiography. In fact, the first chapter was published in Downbeat. I believe there's some
Wow.
places online where you can find this.
Oh, interesting.
I actually really had to, I wish I could have had the amount of real estate to republish it in this book, but it's probably available online and folks can find it. But something that Dan Morgenstern remarked to me about, which was interesting, and I was so happy it was one of the last conversations that he probably had in an interview form. But he told me that for a period, Kenny was doing like album reviews for Downbeat.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and writing for the magazine, which really struck upon me. And I just,
Mhm.
after that conversation, it really presented a bigger picture about how much of a really intelligent guy he really was. And I have a lot of admiration and respect for journalism and people
Mhm.
that are in that space. But I thought that was really cool. We spoke to Dan Morgenstern about Kenny Dorham and Sun Ra, where he told the story about Louis Armstrong. But it was really nice. I love putting these projects together because
Mhm.
selfishly I get to put these voices of people who I think would be interesting to talk with about these musicians. So
Mhm.
I think we had quite a cool jury, and that's not a way of really saying it, but a really great pool of incredible trumpet players to weigh in and talk about both of these guys.
Mhm.
Um, so the Kenny Dorham is great. I also want to segue to talk about Freddie Hubbard on Fire here. Can I do? Yeah, it's like
Oh,
this.
of
Yeah.
course, yes.
I
This,
can't keep it
yeah.
straight. But these are wonderful recordings. The Kenny Dorham's a 2 LP. This is a 3 LP with some really incredible extended compositions and
Mhm.
playing. Um, Man, I think we all have like connections and have like religious experiences with a lot of music, if you will. But I'll tell you that Freddie Hubbard was a guy who had an unbelievable influence on me. I was 18 and I started taking up trumpet lessons because I thought it was the most beautiful and incredible thing, electrifying when I would
Mhm.
hear Freddie Hubbard, and especially even the stuff in the 70s with VSOP. But these recordings are come from 67 at the Blue Morocco again recorded on the Revox with Bernard Drayton. And this band is Benny Maupin on tenor saxophone, Kenny Barron on piano, Herbie Lewis on bass, and the great, powerful Freddie Waits on the drums.
Mhm.
And like the Kenny Dorham, this was also a working band. In the interview, Benny Maupin discusses this about how they were always practicing a lot, and I think that that's probably how you get to that level. But Freddie Hubbard, man, just one of the most virtuosic, powerful, electrifying musicians. This comes
Mhm.
right on the heels of Blue Note. He's heading into Echoes of Blue and Backlash and Atlantic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he's just like at the height of his powers. I thought the testimonial from Stephen Bernstein was incredible. He talks about this like one of the greatest live documents that he's ever heard. But I don't know. I think
Mhm.
Freddie was that guy. Did you guys ever get to see him?
No.
No, I did not have
Yeah.
a chance to see him
No,
live.
no.
Yeah.
Um, this one, Well, I mean, Freddie is just one of my favorite trumpet players. I mean, Kenny Dorham is too, but Freddie is really up there for me. I love all his CTI records.
Oh man, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
But you talk about virtuosity, and he may have just been the best ever. I mean, his and just speed, the tone and all of it just never breaking. Like he can go 1,000,000 miles an hour and it just sounds perfect. Like it's effortless almost for him. But what I was really impressed on this recording too is like the ballad stuff with a mute, right? There's several of those on this recording. I thought that just sounded beautiful. So anyway, I mean, Freddie is just so versatile, right? He can do it all. So
Yeah.
Just powerful.
Mhm.
Just boss horn, man. I don't know what else to say. I mean, he was like such a bridge for me into jazz. I just remember like falling in love with jazz music, and then just like I connected with him in the same way that I connected with people like Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and Pete Townsend. There was just something so exciting and riveting in the lyrical lines that he was playing. Dude, the upper register, some of that stuff is just ridiculous. His control.
Yep.
Yeah, man. George Claben has a tape he has of Freddie around the same time, and I'm hoping that one day we'll be able to put that out. That's good too. But anyways, I'm really proud. It was a lot of fun to share this recording. Now, I think he really matters a lot, and I think that so much of what we do with these releases, for the most part, these artists aren't around physically here anymore. It's such a great way for us to remember them and celebrate them, and realize and remember how badass some of these guys really truly were. But this Freddie Hubbard is, when we were putting the project together and we were trying to come up with a title, Bernard Drayton's like, Zev, you need something to talk about the heat, the intensity, how hot, he's on fire. And we were like, how about Freddie Hubbard on fire? So anyways, some titles are better than others, but I think that this is a pretty accurate description of him and of this release. And I wish he could be here. And I really want to thank the families. I want to thank Dwayne, and I want to thank all of Kenny Dorham's children for working with us, Yvette, Lejeune, and the others. And anyways, man, how wonderful it is that we get to sit here and talk about this music.
Yeah, I think those 67 also is an important year, right, Zev? I mean, things like changing sonically. I think all those guys, they were trying to find where they would fit in this changing musical landscape around 1967, 68. And you can see they're trying something else. The bands are really expanding, stretching, trying new sonorities, even, I think. So this recordings really showed that. And just one last thing, you mentioned so much about Bernard Drayton. In one of the books, you actually went far, and actually there's this whole recording rig here. Yeah, every single equipment of Bernard Drayton, which I found really, really cool and interesting. It's so complete, guys. Yeah, this Blue Morocco recordings, amazing stuff. Is there more from the Blue Morocco in the vaults to come in the future?
I can't speak for Mr. Drayton, but I'll just say I wouldn't be surprised. He was doing this for some time, and there are other recordings kept under lock and key. And where there's a will, there's a way. It all has to start with the music, though. And these are really great documents that I think present the artist in really great light. We have to really begin there. But I hope we'll have a chance to do more with Bernard and Charlie. It's just been a lot of fun. But for me personally, after working on this and chasing, or just like wanting it to happen for so many years, being able to sit here today and discuss it as it's come to fruition is really exciting, for me personally.
Absolutely. And, the last thing I'll say about these two recordings is I really like when you are able to put out kind of related recordings, They're both from the same club. They're two of the best trumpet players of all time. It's just fun and exciting to kind of get more of a view of what was going on in the time period with more than just one band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Really cool.
I do too. I think that's also part. Look, when we do these releases, there's a lot of resources that go into pulling it all together, and I think we have to examine that carefully. And sometimes, even press wise, I'm trying to find continuity sometimes, and it was a great opportunity to promote them together,
Mhm.
because they're both from this club and they're kind of peas and carrots in that respect, although they're totally different musically in
Mhm.
in many ways. But yeah, I do like to do that. You notice I did that with the Bill Evans, two releases from Argentina. I've done that also with Cannonball Adderley on Elemental. I've done that also with Grant Green. And I think sometimes it really helps us. Look, I don't want to just put out a record. I also want to wave the flag and try to
Sure.
find ways for us to have a greater discussion and narrative about what we're doing too. So yeah, but in this case, I guess two from the same venue, not two from Freddie or two from Kenny
Mhm.
Dorham. But anyways, who knows? Who knows what's coming?
Awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All
What's
right.
next?
Shall we? Why don't we talk about Charles Mingus?
Oh my.
Mingus
Mingus.
in Argentina, the Buenos Aires concerts.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
And
sounds great.
yeah, these are recordings for a tour that took place in South America in June of 1977 with tenor saxophonist Ricky Ford, um, pianist Bob, and trumpeter Jack Walrath, pianist Bob Nellums, and the great Danny Richmond, who was so closely associated with Mingus for a very, very long time.
Mhm.
So, anyways, talking about going back down the rabbit hole with tapes and archives, there's a guy named Carlos Malero. He's sadly not with us any longer, but he was a recording engineer in Buenos Aires, and he was a big jazz fan. And in the 1970s, he recorded different concerts. He had recordings of Bill Evans that we put out a couple of years ago, the Morning Glory and Inner Spirit
Oh yeah.
releases. And
Yeah.
I knew about these recordings, and we have been very lucky to work with Jazz Workshop Inc. and the Charles Mingus Estate now for a few years. We first did the Mingus, the lost tapes from Ronnie Scott's a few years ago.
Mhm. Mm.
And knowing that these tapes existed, I really liked the music. I wanted to go back to them and see if we could make a deal. I want to tell you though that this is a really wonderful band, and I got turned on to this band at the beginning of my love for Charles Mingus. I remember sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. Um, at Tower Records, I bought this CD on Landmark Records, Danny Richmond, Cumbia
Mm.
and Jazz Fusion, the last Mingus band AD. And it was really an incredible band
Mhm.
with this group with Cameron Brown in the place of
Right.
Mingus. And these guys, man, it's just something when certain musicians get together and they keep playing gigs, and
Mhm.
there's become a working band. There's just it can be really exciting, and I love the flavor, if you will, of each of these musicians and the overall compositional roux, if you will, of what's created with the elements of them all put together. Um,
Mhm.
but Anyway, so these are from two concerts that took place at the Teatro Coliseo on the first date, which I believe was June 2nd, and then on June 3rd at
Yeah,
the
second.
Sociedad Hebraica in Argentina, which I'm probably mispronouncing part of that. Forgive me. And that was actually a concert that came together at the last minute, from what I understand.
Cool.
So we tried to salvage and have as much of that to expand this release. But great band. Mingus, arguably in his third act, about a year or so later, he would be diagnosed with ALS and would I don't know, but it's spirited music. He sounds great. He's as lively as ever in himself on the bandstand, and there's such a great spirit. And I think it really also demonstrates that Mingus had a lot of different groups, and he had a way of really making great music with them. But this was a working band. No surprise, Mingus in the 1970s. Also, we think about George Adams and Don Pullen. with Danny Richmond and that group, the Changes group. And this is a little different, and it sounds great. And how lucky are we that we get to work on this release and bring this music out for the first time, and the fact that the tape reels survived, and the fact that we were able to pay the musicians and get the bootlegged copy off. This had been leaked partially as a bootleg, but we were able to get the tapes and make something official out of this. And I'm very happy we're able to do that. I want to thank George Claben, as always, for allowing so much of this to happen.
Yeah. First and foremost, this was the first record I got this last batch, Zev.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm not a huge Mingus fan. I like him, but not my first choice. But when I heard this, and I was like, wow, this is different. And going through all the notes and the book, this band was barely recorded, if it was. And
Right.
I thought the music sounds so fresh, so much exploratory. They were playing so free and loose. Felt very relaxed. Mingus plays a little piano as well. And also, just to get out of the way, it sounds spectacular. The sound quality is just like the Bill Evans from the same era. But it really struck me, surprised me. It's an amazing concert. If you're a fan of Mingus, you should be even more into that. If you're not, I think it's a great entryway, because it goes so beyond the classic Mingus records that we know and cherish. But I think this was really surpassed my wild expectations. I really love this, and I think this probably is going to be a big hit among the Record Store Day releases for sure. And oddly enough, it's a concert. According to I was reading what you wrote, it barely got any publicity there, right? It wasn't even a full house or anything, but those guys didn't care. And when I saw a title of a song called Cumbia Jazz, I had to jump right into that song because it's such a great exploration, a great mixture of things they were doing there. It's amazing. And the horns, it's a Mingus record, but those horns, oh my gosh, they steal the show.
Absolutely.
How about, I love also that Ricky Ford talks about in his interview about how Mingus was like, don't play the same thing twice. And at one point, he almost kind of was repeating something he was doing earlier, and Mingus calls him out. There was this, it's really nice to be able to talk to some of these musicians when we're so fortunate to be able to reach them. But, I gotta imagine it's gotta be such a trip for Jack Walrath and Ricky Ford to be listening back to this version of themselves from a younger part in their life. And I don't know, I just think the whole thing is just such a miracle in itself that we get to do this stuff. Man, but I feel the same way, man. I like the recordings a lot, but I feel like I was predisposed. Do you guys know that Danny Richmond album, The Last Mingus Band AD? It's not in print. You might want to. I'm
Wow.
sure there's a copy on the Amazon Marketplace or eBay. It's worth tracking down. And if you like this band, it's a continuation. They played gigs together after this, and they kept the spirit of Mingus and great music going. But it's so funny how sometimes things are kind of work your way backwards. Just like I also like with Bill Evans, I started with the later period stuff and went backwards too. Everyone has their own journey. Anyways, I'm just meandering away, so stop me.
Yeah.
I echo what y'all were talking about this band not really being recorded at all. So it sounds like it doesn't. I mean, it's obviously a Mingus concert and all that, but it doesn't come across to me as what I expect from Mingus, right? It seemed like it was a lot more playful and rocking, like almost like a rock concert. They were just kind of having a lot of fun, and then you get to hear Mingus kind of egging them on throughout the tunes when he's liking what they're doing. So I'm a huge Ricky Ford fan to begin with, so this is really exciting release.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And what's coming across in all the booklets for this last batch, Zev, you just mentioned, it's so many musicians talking about it, right? So many. It's great. These short interviews with them talking about the music, how it was, or the influence if they're not, present at the recording. I think this adds a lot of context and the reach of these recordings, of this music, for sure.
I got to give a shout out. We've got two incredible editors that we work with. First of all, at Resonance Records, John Koenig, who is also the former president of Contemporary Records and a producer in his own right. He taught English at USC and is a brilliant linguist and wordsmith. And he helps us on all these releases, do the editing. I don't run straight Q&As, and it takes up a lot more space if you did, and it becomes kind of mundane, and the ums and the ahs are in there. So we really try to condense it into a statement from conversations that we have. You usually see at the end of the piece, it'll say excerpt from a conversation. But John spends a lot of time. We really are passionate about the reading materials that go with these releases. It's not just about the music, but I feel that it's really important to document and discuss all these other aspects to the recordings. But anyways, John's a big part of that. And at Elemental Music, we have a gentleman named Martin Goldsmith, who's also an incredible part of that team as well. On these packages, it's maddening the amount of details that go into it, the editing and also proofing and everything from cover to cover with as many different eyeballs. We're like looking this stuff over. Sometimes things inevitably get past us, typos or things of that nature. But it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I know that Resonance and Elemental celebrate that as well. And it's great. It's not just music. We're like the books that come with the music. And anyways, it's just become part of the mantra and our overall mission, it feels like, is doing this. And I love doing that part as well, being involved in that process. I'm always learning.
All right. So now talking Elemental, let's go across the pond, Zev, because they are kind of your European branch, right? They've been working on those amazing releases from many different festivals in Europe, or radio recordings in many countries that you've already been to. And now we have a latest Bill Evans. No matter what people say, oh, another Bill Evans, but they're all spectacular.
Thank you. I think so too. And I have to do it to balance myself there. It's been an honor and a joy to work with the Bill Evans estate on this is my 13th production with the family. And these recordings were captured in Finland between 1964 and 1969. And they come from, I'm looking it up here. I had this written down. There's a radio network, named YLE Radio in Finland. And no different than the BBC or with the ORTF, this was another radio network that captured live American artists who were sometimes in the area. And they recorded Bill 3 times between 64 and 69. So, these recordings from August 13th of 64, we have with Chuck Israels and Larry Bunker. We also have from the Helsinki Jazz Festival in November of 65, recordings with Bill, with Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen on bass, the great Alan Dawson, and Lee Konitz as well. And then also recordings from 69 with Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell. So it's listen, it's very subjective for the listeners and people out there, but I think so many people would agree that when you're listening to Bill Evans, he's like pulling from inside himself and taking the music to different places. And I think that these performances are all unique and special, and a lot of people I know echo that enthusiasm. But these are, it's great mid to late 60s Bill Evans. It's recorded incredibly well, broadcast quality. And this is an official release with all the musicians being involved and their families. So very happy about this. What did you guys think about it?
I'm a sucker for all these Bill Evans recordings that you put.
Me too.
I like them all. So what I find interesting to me, in a couple biographies, Bill Evans biographies I read, he always seemed to be very happy and very open in Europe. And sometimes he would travel without the band and play with local musicians. And that's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was just putting an HOP on the map. I think he was a young musician, and well, Bill is looking, go play with him. And also transitions. He always seemed very happy playing in Europe, and with 3 different bands. The Lee Konitz track, "My Melancholy Baby," is just unbelievable how that band sounds, Zev. Sonically as well, it's probably one of the best Bill Evans releases. Everything is so well transcribed here and put on the record. And the lyricism, I mean, this inner peace, this inner playing, it's amazing how such a beautiful, calm music comes from such a tormented soul in a sense, right? Well, someone that had so many like demons inside of him, so many struggles. He's able to put such lyrical music, beautiful. No matter the band, it's always something really spectacular. And I think it's never too much, because there's always a new nuance. There's always a new thing, because all this, what the musicians are putting here, talking about him, he was a great band leader. He always knew how to conduct them, put him at ease to perform, and doesn't feel like he's just a leader. He's in control. No, the band is in control. It's the music is so fluid. That's what I was really caught by this Bill Evans recordings.
I'm glad you like it. I feel the same way. No, there's just something about the guy and the man in this music though that I don't know. I just it's sometimes I gotta, the fan in me and the producer kind of come together when I do these sort of projects. Yeah, I don't know what really else to say, but this is a great representation. We were in New York a few days ago. I was there with Lena and Matt from Surefire Media, and at a place called All Blues, which is a Japanese kisa in Lower Manhattan. And we actually played Melancholy Baby on this incredible stereo system there. And it sounded amazing. Really embarrasses me for what I have so limited, but it's nice I just think that I think the music's recorded very well and it sounds great.
Well, for me, I mean, I've got a lot of the Bill Evans stuff you released, probably 10 of them, probably, I would guess.
Thank you.
I just think he's the master of the trio, like, period, for me at least. And this release having these 3 different bands is really cool, because you can kind of see just the progression through the mid to late 60s with him. And Neil, I mean, NHOP is probably my favorite bassist of all time, so it's going to be really cool to hear him playing with Bill. And then the Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell groups just killer. I mean, they played together. In the press release, it was his longest running band. But
Yeah.
you just think about the bass players he played with. I mean, Scott LaFaro, Eddie Gomez, and then some of the drummers too. It's just it's unique to me, just their skill in becoming a single voice, as a trio. And he always just seemed to pull that off uniquely.
Yeah, I have such an appreciation of piano trios.
Mm-hmm.
All these years in listening to it. Bill is definitely one of the best, one of the greatest. Man, man, Tommy Flanagan and Red Garland and Michelle Petrucciani. There's so many different ones, but Bill is like at the Mount Rushmore, isn't he? He's just he's right there, man. It's incredible. And look, folks are still so deeply moved about what he's doing. He's just told, and the whole record store day phenomenon is amazing because he's been able to connect with younger people, his music and different audiences and cross-pollinating. And I think that's really such a beautiful takeaway, something that's been happening for at least the last 15 years as we've been actively doing this. So I did think also, guys, something I give a lot of thought to these days is that I think for so many of us, that have lived with these studio albums for decades now, and we know inside and out. For me personally, I think hearing the live experience is so interesting. It almost seems like we've been really cultivating a subgenre of live recordings. And obviously, live jazz has always been a part of recorded discographies, but I think
Sure.
even now we get a chance to really, I wouldn't say dissect, but we notice things, we listen to it, and it's almost this uncharted territory, so to speak, of things that come up and things that we can study and listen, and which don't always come out in the studio. So I think that kind of also supports the theory about so many of how these recordings really matter. Ultimately, it's all because of the fans, though, and it resonates with so many different people, though, now. But I think this is a very exciting time in the history of the music for us to have new things that people haven't heard before, and for us to be able to still have these conversations. And yeah, this is a nice one. I'm really proud about this.
Well, there's
And
a reason that Waltz for Debbie and the other Village Vanguard recordings are like some of everyone's favorites of his. You know,
Mhm.
he just flourished in that setting. I mean, it's just a fact. You know,
yeah, but just going back on the point of the live recordings, I mean, now we have the tools to make them sound even better, right? We can actually work on those and just enhance that sound and recreate, rebuild, reform, getting better sounding. Then we have tools for that, which I think is pretty cool as well.
Well, that man, isn't that something? I mean, let's talk about that for a moment. And I know this is a sore subject for people. Oh, are you working from the tapes? Blah blah blah. There are things in the digital realm that can be done to help preserve and enhance and make the music sound so much better.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not really super well versed with AI, but I do know that I think as some time moves on, that's going to play even more of a role, possibly in the
Mm.
restoration of sound recordings. And at the end of the day, it's really about us having a great listening experience,
Yeah.
whether that's analog or digital. But I think that it's really important. The nice thing is that we do find these recordings like the Bill Evans that come from a radio studio. At least or the ORTF stuff, the French, they're recorded well and they have stood up.
Yeah.
um and some, so it's nice. I think we've made some advancements. It's really difficult for me to articulate it. I'm not a recording engineer, but I just know that we're way ahead of where we used to be in terms of the capability of preserving stuff, and a lot of stuff that probably would have just been left on the floor otherwise.
So also on Elemental and Jeep Diggs label, Zev, we have one more for Record Store Day. Patsy Cline's Imagine That, the Lost Recordings, 1954 to 1963. Imagine That, the Lost Recordings. So unreleased, buried, lost recordings of Patsy Cline, such an important, staple in our music, traditional, and so many people love her. And how did you guys come about this one?
Well, thanks. This is a very special project for me. Listen, my secret's out. I'm not just the jazz detective. I listen to a lot of different music, whether that's rock, that's country. I have an old friend of mine, Freddie, who said to me one time, Zev, I love music with dirt on it. And that expression really kind of stayed with me. Um, and truth be told, like when I was really collecting jazz, really, I was buying a lot of records starting in the late 90s, early 2000s. I had this record store that I would go to, Joe's Record Paradise here in suburban Maryland. And, I'd be looking through the new arrivals and I was, grabbing country records just like I was grabbing jazz and rock and everything else. And look, Patsy Cline is an artist who is an icon. She's timeless. She transcends generations and audiences. She even means a lot of things to a lot of different parts of the population. and she's even been a role model and somebody who's inspired the LGBT community. And I find her, it's just timeless, an incredible voice and a pioneer and someone who is just of legend and really important. And so last year, I'll tell you a little story about how this release happened. So, first off, last year, I got a phone call from my good friend Johnson Lee, who is the owner of Joe's Record Paradise in Silver Spring, Maryland. And, no secret, I've been shopping at Joe's since I was a kid. And Johnson and I are friends, and I was dear friends of Johnson's father, the late Joe Lee, who we sadly lost last year. Well, I've known the guys for a long time, and about 25 years ago, literally about 1999, 2000, I was I was a salesman for Universal Music Group, selling to a lot of retail stores in those days. And I would stop at this record store every single day, and I became friends with Joe. Joe says to me, "Hey Zev, why don't you come around here next Tuesday? I can't remember what day it was. Why don't you come by the store in the afternoon? I want to introduce you to this gentleman, Leon Kegerice." And there was a entertainment lawyer coming in, and Leon Kegerice was this. He was a audiophile. He was a Bendix repairman, and he had equipment and would go to places like New River Ranch, Maryland, where he would record ranch concerts, where everyone from the Stoneman family to Hank Snow to George Jones and others would come. You load up your station wagon with your family, and for maybe $2 or $3, you'd go to this public park. There'd be planks, and he would go and travel to these concerts where they would have music all day long, and he
Oh, wow.
he recorded stuff. And through his ability of being a technician, he was this repairman, dealt with electronics. He developed a way of recording audio off of a television set.
Hmm.
And Patsy Cline was on a TV program called The Don Owen Show. It was here, I believe, on WTTG and Channel 5 in Washington, D.C. And Don Owens was Patsy Cline's manager, and he booked her a number of times to appear on this television program. And Leon captured the audio that wouldn't have been preserved any other way. There are
Hmm.
8 tracks of Patsy Cline that are on this release. I've been aware of Leon and Joe and the Keg Rice archives for a long time. So last year, Joe Lee's son, Johnson Lee, contacted me. Zev, there's this recording engineer who called me. He's in Frederick, Maryland, and he's asking about the Patsy Cline tapes, the recordings. He should talk to him. So I got together with him. His name was Dylan Utz. He lives in Frederick, Maryland. That was a place, by the way, that Patsy Cline lived and was from. She also lived in Winchester, Virginia. There's this connection to the Washington, D.C. area. She's like a native daughter, if you will. Do they say that? People say native son. Do they say native daughter? I guess maybe. But anyways, we have these recordings. And first of all, I met with Dylan. And he says, "But Zev, there's all this other unissued material too, and other things." And so, for instance, there's a gentleman here in the Washington area, Mark Zeidelman, who had metal parts, acetates of the earliest known recordings of Patsy Cline on record in 1954 at WARL radio. And it all started moving along. How much material was there? I'm thinking about how could we put together a release, and we approached the Patsy Cline estate, and I kind of went to them on bended knee, honestly. I mean, just totally honest who I am. I have no rights to do something, but hey, would you be interested in working with us? And oh, by the way, my friends at Elemental Music happen to deal with Universal Music Group a lot, licensing, and we have a special arrangement where we work with them to waive blocking rights, to deal with specific licensing. And why are you mentioning that? Well, because Patsy Cline was signed to Universal labels, and there's just a code that we that we go under when we do these kind of releases. But anyways, this release was born. We got the permissions. Elemental Music, Jordi Soleil and Carlos Agustin Callenbert were incredibly generous. We ran these budgets and we put out this release that imagine that. And it's the first package in 13 years. It's got 52 tracks. Guys, I went out of my mind on this one though, because it had more permissions, clearances needed than arguably any other project that I've worked with. We had a brain trust, if you will, with Dylan, myself, and an amazing discographer from Ottawa, Canada, named George Hewitt, who is an expert on Patsy, and he wrote extensively in the package. But we have compiled transcription discs, music from different different recording things amongst collectors, stuff that's never been out before. And we have this beautiful curated release. The artwork, by the way, the package is designed by a great man named John Sellards, who did the Grammy nominated he did the Nat King Cole Hit in a Road box set. He's a country music fan like me too. So we had this team with George, Dylan, myself, John Sellards, and we wanted to really raise the flag and celebrate her. And how lucky are we? But look, this is a departure. No, this is the jazz bums.
That's
I'm the
fine.
music bum. But this is really something special. And it's we also had a chance in the booklet. We spoke with Katie Lang and Ray Benson from Asleep at the Wheel and the great Marty Stewart. And this is truly historic. And we worked with her family, the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Grand Ole Opry, and a whole assortment of different folks that lent us their recordings so that Dylan and his team could work on getting the audio as great as it could be. Just listen, man. You don't need an owner's manual or a roadmap. Just put it on. Just listen to Patsy Cline's voice. We're going to be talking about her for generations to come. She's so special. But for me, the projects that I've worked on, I feel so lucky that I've had a chance to do this one. And I appreciate you guys letting me talk about it.
No, absolutely. I love Patsy Cline.
That's great. She's such a important figure in music, contemporary to folks that had a resurgence lately, right? Like Johnny Cash and Loretta Lynn. I think she deserves to be remembered and put in her correct position. And people, new generations discover her as I think it's very, very important. So we have two more. Do you want to talk about the May releases? I have the Art Pepper here with me. I did not get the Charlie Rouse.
The Charlie Rouse is not available yet. I don't have the Art Pepper yet, but I'll tell you about the Art Pepper. So last year, there we go, right there at a Kongsberg concert. Beautiful. And there's the tape reel. The guys at Elemental have been making a lot of friendships on the other side of the pond. And in Kongsberg, Norway, they've been working with the festival now, going through their tape archives. At first, we put out Bill Evans in Norway last year, which you probably remember. And this comes from the same archive. And this is Milcho Leviev on piano, correct? And I'm
Tony Dumas on bass and Carl Burnett on drums.
Yeah.
It's a 1980 recording at the Kongsberg Festival, just like the Bill Evans was.
These are recordings that were captured on an afternoon following an evening of playing in London at Ronnie Scott's. And Lori Pepper tells the story in the notes about they traveled all day and night to get there. So this is a music from that afternoon concert that took place right from the soundboard. Sounds wonderful, by the way. I'm waiting to hear my final copy. I've been listening to the files all along, and you can see the whole booklet, and and what went into it. A lot of love. And this is actually the second Art Pepper project I've had the good fortune of working on. The first one was live at Fat Tuesdays, which we did about 10 years ago on Elemental. And you can see these photographs that were taken,
It's terrific.
screen grabs from a video that took place there at the concert. Art Pepper was a renegade and an incredibly inspirational artist. When I hear him solo, I hear like a piece of his heart coming out. I just think he's just giving everything emotionally. And there's a beautiful photograph of Art and Lori Pepper together.
Who contributed to the release, right? She
did.
You interview her for the release.
Yep, and I know, and Mark Myers talks about her a bit in his essay, I know as well. And I'm really happy we were able to have Mark come along for this as well. It's not a record store day release. Everyone will be able to find this in this is a mid-May release. I don't have the exact date in front of me.
Yes, I pulled it out here. Yeah.
But I'd encourage people to track down a copy of this.
It's a May 16, May 9th for the limited vinyl, and on May 16, the week after, we're going to have release as a double CD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love late Art Pepper. I mean, I like his later stuff more than his early stuff, honestly.
Yeah,
all those live recordings are just some of my favorite of his work. He just came alive in that setting, for sure.
The Village Vanguard recordings from '77.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, those are insane. Those are nuts. Yeah, absolutely awesome.
I love listening to George Mraz with Cables and Elvin. That is an amazing band. That was you know what? I think honestly, I listened to that before I listened to Meets the Rhythm section. Yeah. Be quite honest with you. Yeah. And I remember it when they put out that box set, which had all the material together. And I remember getting a copy of it in New York when I lived there in the mid '90s. Yeah, man, Art Pepper is just a really inspirational guy, and he really my label co-founder at Elemental, Jordy Soleil, he is like Chet Baker and Art Pepper are his two dudes. And like we leap at an opportunity. If there's something for those guys that's floating around, we try to find it. It's great. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything with this band either, so that'll be exciting to check out for sure.
Yeah, no, the performance is amazing. What they have here. Great recording. He's playing Caravan. He's playing Patricia. Mostly, yeah, everything Art Pepper compositions, and they're long. They stretch like 15, 13-minute songs. There's no stopping here. They really stretch on the songs. Beautiful. It's a great band as well. Again, I think these European recordings, people sometimes are more loose. They just freer to explore a little more. I really like when American musicians are in European festivals or European labels in general. I think more interesting and surprising things can happen. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you that Sonny Rollins box you did, was that last year? The
Freedom Weaver.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good. So
thank you.
Love that set.
We have a few left over. That's
yeah. Speaking of that,
subliminal messaging. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of that, though, you're releasing all these things on CD as well, right?
We do. Yeah, absolutely. I know not everybody's into getting the vinyl, unfortunately. I wish everyone was. But hey, no, we always do. Usually, look, if it's a record store day release, the CD comes out the following week. Yeah. So we definitely do that. And usually full album downloads. And where we can, we'll put a track out there for streaming, at least as a single. So, people can get a little taste of it beforehand. Although I think you kind of know what you're getting into. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the CDs are exciting. I mean, I've got a lot of records and room is becoming a problem, and it's really nice to be able to get, a lot of music in a very small package. So the CDs are attractive.
That works too. I still play my CDs and essay CDs.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too.
Now I just bought a reel-to-reel. I got an Akai refurbished reel-to-reel from the early '70s. So now I'm collecting reel-to-reel tapes too, more than
Wow.
I'm listening to. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I have one more rabbit hole. So
Yeah,
on
I can
on that format things have just popped in my mind. I mean, you do so many archival historic releases, mostly are from gigs. The Dark Pepper just mentioned those are screenshots. Do you guys ever plan or thought about making Blu-rays of concerts?
Huh. It hasn't come up as much, and I'll tell you why, and this may have something to do with, first of all, it's a different when we do financials and stuff, with dealing with, I know I have a little experience. I know that dealing with music publishing with DVDs and Blu-rays is a little different than dealing with audio CDs, and it
Mm.
can get very complicated. And some anyways, there's a whole bunch of reasons because of that. And I also think I know that just from conversations I've had, for instance, with Resonance, that monetizing it's really tough, and then before you know it, it gets out on YouTube, or it's somebody makes a copy of it. And yeah, they can do that with audio too, of course, but I think it's a little different. But yeah, it's a different ball of wax. I love, live video content. I don't know about you guys. There's some channel. Do you guys have Amazon Prime?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's this jazz channel within that you can subscribe for at Amazon Prime, and there is some ridiculous concerts, and I really love it. One of them I saw, and I was really surprised. I mean, how much I was really blown away. There is a recording of Brubeck with Paul Desmond, Jerry Mulligan, Jack Six on bass, and Alan Dawson on drums. And they recorded an album for Atlantic, I
Hmm.
believe, that Michael Cascuna produced. But there's some video concert. It's a European show, and there must be like 7 or 8 standing ovations where they all do
Wow.
the in sync clapping every time, and the
Yeah.
whole room is on their feet, and
That's
the energy is just amazing. But
wow.
I again, going down the rabbit hole, it's really enjoyable. I love jazz video, and I love visually being able to see it, as
Mhm.
much as listening to,
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I didn't realize that was a thing on Prime. I will definitely look into that.
Oh yeah.
it's a channel within, and I
Mhm.
think you can search for jazz, and there's a name for it. I forgot what it was. But that Brubeck show, it must be from around 72, because
Mhm.
I think that's when that group was touring at the time. And then Brubeck, man, they were just all so great. And I don't always rave as much. It was really good. Anyways,
Cool.
there's a lot.
That's
And
great.
and on that channel, I believe, or it's on Prime, uh there was a series of Village Vanguard video recordings that was done, and I think View Video put them out in the 80s and 90s on VHS. I had
Mm.
them.
Mhm.
So there's a Mal Waldron with Charlie Rouse,
Oh wow.
Woody
Nice.
Shaw, Reggie Workman, and Ed Blackwell, and they made an album, of course, on Soul Note. The
Mhm.
video, there's video of it, and it's online, and there's a Freddie Hubbard one that's worth checking out too. I had several of them at the time. I can't remember.
Yeah, it would be
Anyways,
interesting to actually see them as well. I mean, that sounds really cool. I'll definitely look into that for
Oh,
sure.
definitely.
it's a good way of wasting an afternoon, believe me. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call it waste. Let's
Yeah,
enrich. It's a good way of enriching your
Oh yeah.
afternoon.
absolutely. Well, Zev, as always, we really appreciate you supporting the channel and sharing
Come
all
here.
these stories and this music with us. So thanks for coming on
I
once again.
I really appreciate you guys, and I just wanted to say to anyone out there that's watching this how much it means a lot to me personally. Thanks for all your support in supporting these projects and making it all possible. We can't do it without you.
Hmm. That's great, Sev. Again, thanks for joining us, for the opportunity, for allowing us to listen to this beautiful music and talk to people about it. And I think this is one of the record store days. The ratio like great to bad is like 100%. Everything is great here. Whatever you pick based on your preference on type of music, the musician that you like the most, you will not be disappointed sonically and performance-wise and package-wise. Read guys these notes because they're great.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. And anyways, I always feel a little self-conscious. I'm not like the most well-spoken when it comes to articulating all this greatness. So thanks for everyone that's putting up with listening to me. I hear my mundane voice and I want to groan sometimes, but no, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh,
Hope
no.
it's not too much hope it's not torturous for too many of y'all.
Absolutely
Oh
not.
no, we love it. We love it.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know in the comments which of these releases you're interested in picking up, and we'll see you next time.